Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first budget meeting for North Middlesex Council. It is March 25th. We'll get this meeting started. Call the meeting to order. We are missing Councillor Nerda is not able to attend tonight. First order of business, anybody having disclosure of pecuniary interests, please put them through to the clerk. Seeing none at this time, I'll turn this over to our treasurer, Estelle.
Thank you, Your Worship. So tonight's meeting is going to be, as soon as Natalie gets the PowerPoint going, the agenda for the meeting, we're going to start with just a preview or answering the questions that I have received from members of council in regards to the operating budget. Then I'm just going to show you a quick what the proposed tax rate increase would represent for a typical household in the municipality. And then we're going to move on to the operating budget for tonight. We're going to be going tab by tab in your binder. I will have it up on the screen for individuals who may be joining us via YouTube. So let's start with the agenda. Can I have the mouse, please? Are you going to put it on full screen? Thank you. All right, so we've already covered the agenda for tonight. The questions that I have received, I only received 3 questions, so I'm going to take that as a positive sign. So the first question is, I didn't see a budgeted amount for the trail improvement in collaboration with ABCA. So at the August 16th meeting and following the Trails Group delegation presentation, Council gave the group their blessing to go ahead with the proposed trail budget, but there was no dollar value contribution given at that time, which is why there is no amount included in the budget before you. In comparing budgeted amounts for the Elsa Craig and Parkville Community Centers, I noticed the budgeted amount for Elsa Craig. Elsa Craig is almost 3 times the amount for Parkville. Please explain the difference. And that is simply because in Elsa Craig, hydro for everything in Lions Park is included in that one hydro account. So that includes including the cost for the ball diamond lights, which is quite substantial in that DL count. And the last question, the West Williams Park salaries and wages seem low. Does this amount include grass cutting and field maintenance, or is it assumed by the rugby club? It is not assumed by the rugby club. We are still responsible for those fees. But the wages and salaries are distributed based on the last 5 years' actual expenses for that department, which is why it can be lowered depending on the allocation for each year. So that's the end of the questions that I've received. Now, what you see before you is the proposed tax rate increase, what it will do for a property that is assessed at $400,000. So the 2023 taxes, the municipal portion only, it doesn't include county and education, it's strictly the municipal portion, were $3,298. And in 2024, with the proposed tax rate increase, it would come up at $3,458 for a difference of $160 for the year, which equals $1,333 per month or 44 cents per day.
Okay, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Rupp. I do have a question, and I appreciate the house, and I still question where you're going to find a $400,000 house in North Middlesex. However, I can accept your response. My question for you, though, is what impact will this have on the farm rate, on farm taxes?
Farm taxes is 25%
Yes.
of, so depending on their assessment, it would be a quarter of what the residential would be. So if you have let's see if I can do some calculations in my head here. You had $1 million valued at $1 million for farm rate. So I need to borrow your calculator. I can't calculate.
So,
It would still be just 25% of what $1 million residential property would be.
so if a farm that's evaluated at $1 million, they'd be paying taxes on $250,000, correct? At a value of 25%?
Well, yes, you can look at it that way, or the tax rate would be 25% of the tax rate for the residential.
I have a farmer next door to me who's grunting a little bit, so I'm just not clear on this because, and the reason I asked this question, Estelle, is because I've had a number of complaints from landowners complaining about the tax rate on land. And if the land is evaluated, and as we know, I don't know what's evaluated at now, but it is going for roughly $3 or $4 million for 100 acres, so $30,000 to $40,000 an acre. I guess my question is, what will the tax increase be for that parcel of land? What would it be?
Well, it would still represent for the proposed tax rate increase of 4.85%.
But what's it come down to dollars? Here, we're looking at an amount of roughly $200 or just $159, but on a farm, then it'd be significantly more, would it not?
It would be, yes, it would be 4.85% more than what it was last year.
Okay.
Not, yeah. So
But
if
it's
you look,
whatever their assessment is.
yeah, if you look in your taxation tab in your binder.
Okay.
So
I
in your
think we have that
taxation-
answer down farther.
Okay, I'll look forward to the answers. Thank you.
I can give you a concrete numbers looking at a farmland property that was assessed at, let's say 1.5 million. I'll do those calculations for you. You're welcome. All right. Okay, moving on to the actual operating budget. We're going to go, as the mayor mentioned earlier, we're going to go tab by tab. We're going to start with the admin and finance tab. And we're going to go page by page. And we're not going to go line by line. So on page 1 of the admin and finance tab, so the one that starts with at the top under revenues, you see council. Are we all on the same page?
Yeah, so ignore the yellow pages for
Ignore, yeah,
tonight. For tonight, all right?
the admin and finance. Okay. Correct.
Is that for people who are laying on the couch?
No, we'll rotate it. It's all good. Mind you, that would work. They'd have to be leaning on the
All
right
right.
side.
So we have the first page in front of any questions on this page? No. No?
Are you all on the first page?
Yep.
So do we have, so while Natalie gets this done, we can start the process. So on the page 1, I apologize, the pages aren't numbered. They don't come out numbered in the in VADM, but can work on that. Oh, they are numbered at the top. Yeah, but most
Yep.
of them are page 1. So in the page that starts with council at the top, are there any questions?
Councillor Cornelison.
On the OMPF allocation for the 2023 actuals versus the budget was at 720, but the actual is 540. Is that because we have not received the total amount yet?
That is correct.
Thank you.
We could, this is based on the December of 23.
Okay.
And we do receive the last portion in the first months of the following.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that page? Seeing none?
So on the second page, I believe Councillor Cornelison was a page ahead of us. So the page now that we're looking at is the one that does start with the OMPF allocation. So do we have any questions on that?
Don't see any questions? No questions? All right.
Moving on to the page that starts, maybe it'll be simpler if I just quote the first GL account on the page. So the page that starts with 1/5/12/01/30/20. Do we have any questions on that page?
Seeing no questions?
Moving on to the next page, that's municipal election. So the first GL account is 1/4/12/02/8002. Do we have any questions on this page?
No questions? Okay.
Next page is Service Ontario.
Any questions on the Service Ontario? Councillor Pinellas?
Yes, sorry. And you may not be able to answer this question, but with a number of our neighboring communities going to a kiosk for their Service Ontario services, do we anticipate an increase in services here?
Through your worship, we have not been informed that we will be offering more services. We have just signed a 3-year commitment with Service Ontario. So at this point, right now, it's status.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and reduce my questions to you at that time.
It's not a problem.
Any other questions? Councillor Irwin?
Your worship, thank you. Just to follow up on that previous question, so we haven't seen an increase in volume since our neighboring communities have gone to the kiosk?
Irwin, yours not working right now? You're talking about traffic, the traffic.
Yeah, just the traffic. We have no control over who uses it. I mean, as long as they're a resident of the province, they can use the Service Ontario kiosks or our service. So I'm just wondering if we.
Okay, great. I haven't heard that it's been significant, but I have noticed that there have been, I'll call lineups, which 2 or 3 deep, more than when I first arrived here. So I think there might have been an increase, but I was trying to help out Estelle, but I'm not sure I'm helping a lot. If we've actually got a specific number increase, but I think we probably have seen some.
Okay, any other questions on that? So there's nothing concrete yet, Bill. But
It might be something we want to monitor because we have no control.
right.
Public can use it regardless.
And I have heard people do come from fairly far away to use our kiosk here because it's, or our location here, I should say, because I think it's the staff member, I'll be honest with you. She does a fantastic job. She's so friendly. She's so efficient. And I think people do come for that reason. I think maybe the question was before, are we having increased services, meaning the number of additional things we offer to people to provide, and that hasn't been offered at this point. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
I took to understand that question the same way.
Okay.
If we were offering more services or not, it's all the same.
I'll make every effort to clarify my questions.
Any questions? Any other questions for Service Ontario?
No other questions? Okay.
Next page under HR.
Questions on HR? Councillor Pinellas?
And I'm sorry to be a pain, but I do have a couple of questions on it. My first question on that is training and education is increased by $8,700. Are we training another person for HR, or what are we doing there?
We are furthering some health and safety training for all management as well as all staff, which is something that hasn't been done in a very long time. That's why that line item is increased.
Okay, fine. So it's not just in that department, it's for the 8
It's
municipalities as a whole.
for the whole municipality, correct?
So then, of course, that leads to my next question, which is a staggering amount of $20,000 for contracted services. Is that again for health and safety?
No, the $20,000 under contracted services is one of the capital projects. Is we are going to be suggesting an ergonomic assessment for the municipality as a whole. So it's not just for the office staff, it's for all members of staff. So we have a capital project for 20,000. And in the operating, we also have a 20,000 for the implementation of that study.
If I understand you correctly, does that mean that Public Works will also have an ergonomic assessment done on the trucks and whatnot?
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
Any other
Okay.
questions for HR?
Any other questions on HR?
And that's it for admin and finance. We now move to your protective services tab.
Okay.
I do
First
have the
page.
questions. I'm sorry, I have
No,
several
no,
questions.
don't, never apologize for asking
Never
the questions.
So
That's
my
why we're
first
doing-
question is, which was a result of our meeting at the fire committee, in which our volunteer firefighters are now going to be recognized as part-time employees. I specifically asked for a cost evaluation, what the numbers would be. I'm asking now, if there's any cost increases to that change in their role, is that included in this budget?
I think that decision was made after the budget was done. So it is not the only additional increase that we will have will be according to or regarding the OMERS contributions for those volunteer firefighters who choose to enroll. They will not all enroll. So at this point, we do not have the information required to calculate that.
Yes, and I think, as I recall, I did ask for that, but it's not been forthcoming for that information. My other question is for conferences and conventions. It has more than doubled to $8,000. And again, my question is that a number of staff? Is that one person? Well, how do we account for that?
I'm sorry, are you looking at 2102-3002?
Yes. It went, last year it was 4,000. This year we're budgeting 8,000, so it's more than double. Well, it is double, and I'm not clear why.
It is to attend 2 conferences and it's for one individual. The $4,000 was taken out of the education and training. So if you look at the education and training account, which is, oh, sorry, it's on the next page, 2103,
2103,
3008,
3008.
education and training.
Yes, yes.
It was reduced by 4,000. So we basically just reallocated that budgeted $4,000 from education and training. Because if you look at the actuals and the trending for the education and training in 2023, the actual was 24, almost 25,000, and the budget was 30,000. So we just reduced that amount to 26,000 for 24 and reallocated the 4,000 to conferences and convention.
Okay, I think. I don't quite follow that, but
So that there's a nil impact on the budget, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
For that change. So the education and training has been reduced, conferences, but it is to attend 2 conferences for the chief.
okay. That includes all costs with this conference?
Correct.
Councillor Irwin, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, and I want to revisit the first question my colleague had in terms of the move from volunteer to part-time status. Aside from OMERS, are we not also obligated to pay MERCs for the employees now, CPP, employment insurance, et cetera?
Yes, we are. We are still reviewing that information. We are in contact with CRA and OMERS and all the third-party organizations that would deal with this, but that would be included in the cost analysis that Councillor Cornelison asked for.
Follow up?
Yes, Your Worship. So just a general question on MERCs. Do we use like a 12 or a 15% total of salary to calculate our mandatory employment costs? It's sometimes between 12 to 15%. I'm curious what it is.
We actually go with actuals.
So,
The
but-
percentage.
Yeah, but normally it's like 12% or 15. I'm trying to get a handle on the number here, if I may, Your Worship. So if it's a 12% increase,
So
then that's a big dollar amount in terms of, unless we reduce the number of service hours of firefighters.
okay, what we've done here, and I can understand the confusion. So looking at the increase in the salaries and wages and benefits.
Yep.
So what we've done is as you know, the COLA increase for everybody is 2.7%. And that also includes the volunteer firefighter. So we have an envelope budgeted for the volunteer firefighters. And the envelope that was there for 2023 has been increased by the 2.7% as well. So the envelope for the volunteer firefighters is 208,709, and that includes salaries.
That's not my question. My question is, as a rule, organizations tend to set a 12 or 15% target for the mandatory employment-related costs, just as a rough budget. We don't have one for the volunteer firefighters. So their increase, if we keep the same number of hours, will go up their cost, salary by 12 to 15%, I suspect.
If I may, Your Worship, that's not how the salary is calculated for the volunteer firefighters. For the volunteer firefighters, there are, out of that $208,000 envelope, we have a certain set salary for the captains and the deputy chief. And then for the calls, the number of calls, it goes on a point system. So if the number of calls is increased in 2024 compared to 2023, the value of a point is going to be increased. If the number of calls is the same, then the value of a point will be the same as it was in 2023.
Worship, I understand that. My question is simply this. Now that they're part-time, we have to pay them an hourly wage, and that hourly wage will have employment-related costs like unemployment insurance and CPP, correct?
Correct.
And we don't know what that is yet. Because it's not, because you said, if I may say, Your Worship, that this budget was done prior to that change.
Correct.
All right. So my estimate is the benefit costs or the cost for firefighters will go up 12 to 15% more than what's shown here.
For the benefits. Yes.
Well, 12 to 15% of total salary. So yes, it will.
Carolyn.
Maybe I misunderstood. And Estelle and I haven't spoke to this specifically at all. So, but this was my understanding that it would come out of that set pot of money that's already established. So if the cost of a point, including benefits, is currently 15 and it goes up to 20, it's still the same pot of money, so that it doesn't increase the pot, it just spreads it out. The value of each, which what they get on their paycheck will go down, but now we'll be paying the CPP and other things out of that same pot of money. That is the way I understood it.
Okay,
Yes,
Estelle, go ahead.
that is included in the 208,000. But you are right, Councillor Aaron, the employer portion, the CPP and the EI has not been included.
Our portion. And the firefighters will have a slower take-home paycheck. Are they
Yes.
happy about that?
I'm not sure that whether they're happy or not, but certainly this is the way the entire province has gone. And I'm not sure we're happy or sad about it ourselves, but it's the way it's gone as well. So
Just an aside, Your Worship, we have a difficult time recruiting volunteer firefighters. I know this is something we need to do because of provincial legislation, but I think it's going to make our recruitment even more difficult.
Agreed. I don't think anybody's disagreeing with it. If that was our decision to make, we certainly wouldn't have gone this way. Unless it was requested by our firefighters, but that's not the direction it came from.
From what we've been told, it was presented that way to the firefighters, the volunteer firefighters. So they are aware of it.
I think I should add to that as well is that I think Greg would mention if he were here, the chief, is that we are at full complement at this point in time, which is good news. we've just finished a recruiting drive and that was quite successful. So we're in a good position that way. I'm not arguing the point that it's always hard to find volunteers.
And the chief will be here a little bit later. So when he does get here, we can revisit those questions and get his opinion on it.
I think he can speak to the firefighters knowing and their reaction, to their response. Okay, any other questions on that page? Seeing none? Oh, sorry, Councilor Keo.
It's okay. Estelle, I was just looking at the $10,000 allotted amount for the transfer to joint boards, 4,003. Is that just with the agreement that we have with them this year?
For Lambton Shores?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's new to us.
Yeah, I think Greg did bring a report to council for that in December, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Thank you.
But that has not been signed. It's in the budget, but just so you know, that has not been signed. Okay, that agreement has not been done, but it's put in the budget that we can.
As a placeholder, correct?
Yeah, okay. I was just looking, I see the committee kind of looking at each other. That was, yeah, no, it has not been, there's not a signed agreement right now. Okay, the next page, and that starts with 3005, yes. Any questions on there? Councilor Canellison?
Thank you. My first question is on 3019, fire station internet service. And I see that historically it's been around $730. Now, last year, for some reason, it went up to 2,028, and now we're budgeting $2,400. Can you help me understand the reason that the internet has gone up triple?
I certainly can. It's due to the installation on the EMS side of the building
So it's just a 1 year thing.
for the installation, but then it's also a higher cost per month.
So this is ongoing at this cost. Okay. And then my other question on that same page is 4005 contracted services. Seems to be a new item that's been added in last year and this year. From 544 last year to 1,500 this year. What contracted services would that be dealing to?
It's to calibrate and maintain the fit tester.
Do what?
The fit tester for the masks.
Oh, okay.
Okay, any other questions on that page?
Yeah, my last one. Emergency management and education and training, 3008 at the bottom. It's a new item for $1,000. It's never been there before historically. Is that for the emergency management team or who's that for?
That's correct. It's for the control group for the emergency management.
Okay.
Councilor Irwin?
Through your worship, where could I find the rent revenue that we're now receiving for EMS? What page would that be on? We must have probably passed it.
Yeah, that is on the page just prior to that under EMS station at the top. Your microphone's not on.
Oh, well. I wanted it off and I said, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on that page? Seeing none, the next one is just the
It's just the totals.
totals of it.
So we now move on to the policing. So 22010960 is the first yell down.
Councilor Canellison?
And I apologize. I missed a meeting last week. I did observe it, but I couldn't join in because then Natalie was too busy and I didn't have to get a hold of her to get me online. But with the increase in policing costs, and I'm sure the question was asked, but I might have missed it. Will there be an increase in coverage? Increase?
I'm sorry, I did not attend last
So-
week's.
He would not give any specific because but he said they do have more resources. They have increased their resources and said yes, that there would be more coverage because they did increase the resources.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Up, the term was there would be more coverage. It just may not be identifiable here immediately, but they can pull it in from other areas.
Where needed, yes,
Yes.
yeah, where correct. Any other questions on that page? Seeing none, Councilor Irwin?
Yes, and I don't know if this made the budget or not, your worship, through you. The cost of the policing committee membership, the new policing committee, is that covered somewhere here?
Yes, it was. It's not, you don't see it on in your binder because it was not originally. It has been since then. So the increase under, I created a new account under 2201, 4,005, and it was included at 15,000.
Is there a breakdown on that? Like, Carolyn,
That was.
that's, I mean, we know that our representative is not getting $15,000.
No, not.
No, but I'm
he's
just
not.
saying, I don't want people to think that you're getting paid $15,000 to go on a committee.
No, that was the example from the policing committee that was in Thames Center. That was, the numbers from that were taken and reallocated as if it was for the entire county and expanded to include the whole county. And that was the number that was suggested to all of us to carry in budget based on our populations. So whether that will be actual when we come back to it, I don't know. But that was based on that example of that police committee that was already established.
Any other questions on that? Seeing none?
Next page is for the school crossing guard. That's pretty consistent with last year.
Any questions on school crossing guards? No? Other than thank you for doing it?
Mhm.
Yes.
And the next page is under mosquito control.
Councilor Nelson?
I have to ask. I just have to. Carlisle? We're adding Carlisle? Can you help me understand that?
I certainly can.
Mhm.
With the past couple of years, there has been ponding water, laying water, which of course becomes stale, and it also is a breeding ground for mosquito larvae. So that's why it's incorporated. There has been some requests for that. So with diseases such as Black or West Nile, as you're well aware of, Councilor Nelson, I think it's safety and it's also convenient.
And I appreciate that, Councilor Kayla, I clearly do, but have they ever heard of drainage? We do have a drainage superintendent they could contact.
However, we would have to be draining the tributary in order to get rid of the water, and that is the Sabo Bayfield. So perhaps maybe you could bring that up in your department.
Okay, let's
Thank you.
come back to this one. All right, just like I think Carlisle was done last year too, wasn't
I can't honestly answer.
it? Okay, we'll find that out. Councilor Irwin?
Again, your worship, I have a related question. Mine was a little more general. I'm curious what geographic covered, which ones aren't, and why we're not covering the areas that are not being. What is the criteria for mosquito control? That was my question.
So people who have the right to opt out. And there's a couple of areas that you will very noticeably see that it would be nice if they didn't opt out for the sake of the community of the town and stuff. That's fine. But that's the reason is private property, they can opt out. If you want to add to that, but that I know that's, and I believe Donna does put out the map. Councilor Daigle.
I think originally the areas were based on the wetland in consultation with the Sabo Bayfield Conservation Authority. People that since then have said, well, yeah, but I don't want it on my property. So those are the ones that are still opted out.
Right.
Just using it where they expect it's going to be needed.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on mosquito control? No other questions on mosquito control? We've had some already this year.
Moving, Moving on to the building
Yep.
department.
Questions? Councillor Nelson?
Thank you. I actually had two questions, Estelle. One I understand is the increase for the building inspection and professional engineering, and I understand that, so I won't bother asking that question. But just above that, at 3042, building licenses has gone to $10,000. What exactly are building licenses if we don't have a building department?
That's for the cost for the cloud permit software.
Okay. Okay, so it's kind of like internet. Kind of, no?
No, it's software. It is on the cloud.
Okay.
Software that Middlesex Center uses and we use it. And the individuals who are applying for permits can also log on and use it to apply for permits.
Okay.
So it's software.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on that page? Councillor Irwin?
I'm just curious, your worship, through you, how we arrived at the estimate of $230,000 for permits. And how does this reflect our increased fees that we're now charging?
The 230,000 is a slight increase over the actuals for 23 and is equal to the budget for 2023. We have no way of knowing what the actual permit requests are going to be for the year because we have not reached our 230 budget for 2023. And if you look at the 3-year trending, it's at 210,000. And you have to remember that in the 1 year, in the 2022 actuals, it had included one very large building permit that is not going to be happening again in any time soon. So
Okay.
it's basically
And-
on
and this-
trending.
And this was something that we talked about at committee too. This did come up. Councillor Nelson, you had
Yeah, I do have a follow-up question similar to what my colleague next to me was asking. However, and it's related to the building permits. So we have a fixed rate now with Middlesex Center for the contracted services. However, if there's a significant decrease in building applications, will that amount decrease? Or is that a fixed rate that we have to pay regardless?
That is a fixed rate that we have to pay regardless. And if at the end of the year, if the department as a whole is in a deficit, then we will withdraw money from our building department surplus to make it come even.
And what if they have a surplus? Do they reimburse them?
No, it goes into our reserves.
Okay, thank you.
any other questions on this page? Seeing none, the next one is strictly the totals. And then on to animal control.
And we move to animal control. That's correct.
Questions on this one? No questions? Okay,
So we then move on to bylaw enforcement.
by law enforcement. No questions on bylaw enforcement? Okay,
And that's it for the protected services tab. We now move to operations. The first page, so the one that starts with 1,430,100,0749. Are there any questions?
Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. My question is for Vance, I believe. And I'm under the roadways general with roadways salaries and wages, 1010, the top line, wages, salaries and benefits. It's increased by $97,770. Is that then anticipating the acquisition of 2 more operators or 1?
Sorry. Through your
Go ahead.
worship, Estelle, would you be able to answer that question?
Oh, sorry.
Certainly. Yes, that includes two additional.
At what point do we discuss the feasibility of retaining 2 additional operators versus possibly 1 and the other at a later date if it's warranted? At what point do we discuss that? If we approve this now, are we then committed to retain 2 operators?
just the point to discuss it is right now. So
Okay.
right now, there's already been one position approved through the reorganization review.
Yes.
So the question is for the second operator. That committee has been discussed at committee, and committee is recommending the addition of an additional operator. So 2 operators instead of 1.
Okay, so for discussion purposes, I'm not necessarily opposed to the addition of an operator at this time, and I think we mentioned that previously at another council meeting. However, I do challenge the need to add 2 operators at this time without evaluating the success or the benefits of having the 1 additional operator. So I'd like to have that as a discussion now with Vance or whoever else is willing to engage in that. I'm not opposed to approving the budget for 2, but I would like to delay the hiring of the second operator until it can be determined that that person is actually needed.
Okay, Carolyn, you're going to start.
Certainly I can pass this over to Vance as well, but Vance and I've had this conversation, and it's like, was my understanding that there was some concern with adding the 2 at this time. So what I might suggest is that we consider, obviously moving ahead with the org review 1, and that's already happening, but delay the second until, I would suggest, later in the year, maybe bring it back early this fall to have a discussion of how we're making out with the gravel roads and other things that are of urgency right now, and discuss the need for the second one, and maybe only budget this year for maybe a quarter of the year for that position. And if at that time it's just determined it's not needed, then that money could go to reserves. If it is required, then we could fill the position at that.
I'm not opposed to that. That's pretty much what I was hoping that we could come to agree on. However, you indicated there, if I understood you correctly, that the decision to hire a second operator would come back to council at that time?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm suggesting, is we bring a report back to council, probably sometime maybe a late August, September timeframe. So it gives us a time to do the recruitment if we wanted them for winter, but bring it back to council for council's decision based on our experience over this next
Okay.
6 months.
I have a follow-up question, whether I believe it's more in line for Vance, but possibly for yourself. I will direct it at Vance. If we retain the services of this operator, will this person be qualified to operate a grader efficiently and effectively?
Through your worship, so this would be, this would be the second operator that you're speaking of?
Or the one we're hiring right now?
Essentially, the one through the org review, as it stands right now, they would not be able to operate a grader right away. However, in the budget for further consideration, we're going to be training our operators so that we can keep graders rolling more often than we have in the past.
When you say, because I guess that comes out perhaps a little later. So what we're hiring someone now who cannot operate a grader. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Why would we do that?
Through worship, it would be far beneficial to recruit and develop your staff internally, and provide that training so that they can operate a grader. I would also like to add that to try to go and find a qualified grader operator in the construction business right now, and to try to recruit them under our wage that we have right now, we would have a difficult time.
And I understand that. So my final question for you is, how many qualified grader operators do we currently have employed at the municipality?
We currently have 3 grader operators at the moment that they're like our primary grader operators right now. They can grade roads very, very well. And we have others that have had some seat time. They're working on their skills as well.
Okay, my final question then, given that we only have 3 grader operators, how would the grading schedule or requirements be impacted by vacation time and time off during the summer months?
Your worship, it would be significantly impacted. We currently have staff that have earned 6 weeks vacation. They have, by way of the collective agreement, they've worked and earned their banked time, and as well through the collective agreement, and et cetera, through the corporation. They have 18 sick days as well per year. So when you look at the senior operators that we have, and they're the ones that are grading our roads, it is incumbent on me to, and as council has directed, to improve our grading program. I have to train operators and make sure that we have qualified operators in rotation so that when those staff are away, that those graders remain and can be rolling instead of being parked.
And my final question, because you touched on something that triggered another question for me. In the London Fire Department, the firefighters are assigned vacation time as opposed to selecting vacation time. And I think a number of other corporations and organizations are following suit. Is that an option for this municipality to do that as well?
I think that may be more of an HR question, unless you want to attempt it, Vance.
Thank you. I can provide an answer. We can definitely assign certain times of the year that we need all operators. For example, say for grading, and we can select certain weeks that we're going to limit the amount of employees that are away, so we can make sure that we get our work done. That's critical. During our, for example, during our fresh gravel application and our calcium application, those operators are key. They're vital to the program. So we've got great operators. They don't challenge that. They are typically here for those programs. So the corporation isn't held sort of at a disadvantage or whatever. But in the future, absolutely, we can look at sort of selecting those key times where employees can be away.
Thank you.
Just before I go to you, Councillor Teal, I just want to follow up with a little bit what Vance is talking about. And he stopped short of saying what his goal is, but we talked about this at Budget Committee at great length. And his goal, and the reason that we wanted the option of a second operator, if needed, goal is to have 6 able-bodied staff to be able to run graders. So there's 2 staff for each grader. And on top of that, because of training, as we touched on, you'll see there's $8,000 added to the training budget, and that is specifically for someone coming in for grader training. All right, so that is part of that program, and I know you didn't touch on that, Vance, but talked of that at the committee. So that very much, that's the focus and why they're going there. I do agree with the offset of the second person of assessing that, see what we have and assessing it, and then going from there. But that's the plan going forward, correct?
Through your worship, that's correct. We also have in our collective agreement that there's a requirement that we need to provide a training program, a greater training program. And moving forward, this has given us an opportunity to sort of revamp our greater program, like Brian has suggested. So having that extra person would be key.
And that leads me to one more question now that I've had that, and that is, I know that we can assign someone to be trained and to be a grader operator. Can they also decline to accept that offer and say, no, I'm not doing that?
Through your worship, when an operator 2 becomes an operator 1, the key component to that right now essentially is efficiently operating a grader. And so moving forward, and I'll just elaborate here a little bit. Moving forward, we're going to have professionals come in to train our operators to be grader operators and assess them and audit them, so that we can ensure that they can set grade for calcium and final grade for our gravel roads. So once you become an operator one, that employee or that operator does not necessarily get the opportunity or to deselect from the requirements of that job. So they have to operate a grader. They have to be able to drive a plow truck and load a backhoe and many things. So generally speaking, when those operators become operator ones, they understand what those roles are, and they cannot just say that they're not going to operate.
Okay, Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. My question would be for Vance, and this may also incorporate into a human resources question as well. Do we have any anticipated retirements coming?
Through your worship, I do believe it's a very good question, Councillor. However, I do believe at this particular forum, we wouldn't necessarily be allowed to speak about that. But that being said, I'm not aware of any.
And then I just have one more follow-up. With senior operators, is there currently a mentorship or an apprenticeship of sorts where perhaps maybe a senior operator can slip someone that's interested into that seat and say, you're doing the next mile and a quarter, and I'm going to follow you and critique you?
Leadership, we definitely have employed that or have used that technique. And two guys will head out and so forth, and how you just described. And typically in the past, that's sort of, coming up through the ranks. I'm talking years and years ago. That's typically how those, and in many sectors, it's like that. You got into that machine because you wanted it, and then you learn sort of. It was a tough way to learn, but you learned. We are doing that, but to further certify it and make it a more solid program, we're bringing in the pros to train those guys. But we do have operators that have put their hand up and said, "Hey, can someone come out and show me how this works so I can take it out and I may not be able to do the super deep cuts with respect to grading, but they'll fill some potholes and they'll do the best they can." So yeah.
So there is some interest within the organization without.
Through your worship, absolutely. We have operators that are operator twos right now that are definitely interested in moving up, and I'm looking forward to moving that program ahead. It's it's definitely needed.
Deputy Mayor Hodgins. You're good? Anything else on that page?
Your worship, if I may clarify, in regards to the salary and wages, what is included in the numbers for you include the reorganization results. So the inclusion of one operator plus an additional operator. Both of those positions have been included starting April 1st. So now for the second operator, there's been discussion as to delay the start. Do we want to determine now what the start date would be for budget purposes? Or am I leaving it starting April 1st for budgeting purposes?
Councillor Nelson, go ahead.
I'm comfortable leaving the amount in there as it is, but that we don't actually retain that individual until additional discussion here at council to evaluate the benefits of the one additional worker that we have now coming on board, and then to determine whether another is in fact needed.
Okay, perfect. I would agree with that. Okay. No other questions on that page? All right, next page. And that is starts first line of the small tool purchase,
Correct.
3048.
Actually, I believe now for a good part of this tab, we can follow the pagination at the top right-hand corner of the page. So we're on page 2.
Okay. Any questions on this? Yep. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. My question is for down tree removal and brush cutting restorations. On 4005, contracted services, in the amount of $47,000. Historically, when we had more workers on the public works, they did all the tree cutting in the rural areas, not so much in town. Well, they did in town, but we took that away. Now, if we bring on these workers that you're looking for, can we return that responsibility to your department?
Through your worship, we would definitely be taking on, with additional staff, we would definitely be taking on additional tree work. This primarily, the amount in this budget here for contracted services is typically for the much larger trees in our urban areas that our staff are not certified to take down and due to risk management.
Very well, thank you.
One comment I would just make, Councilor Nelson, they did have the old bucket truck at that time, and we did get rid of the bucket truck, so we don't have that lift to do that, the same as what we did have.
I understand.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Other questions on that page? All right, page number 3. Councilor Irwin?
Thank you, your worship. Through you, I have a question and an observation, and the question is relating to gravel purchasing. And did I get this wrong? Is 3041 gravel purchasing? Is that where we normally put the gravel we purchase?
So you're under 3110.
3110, 3041,
Okay.
yes. Mhm.
This would be the gravel being purchased for smaller projects, not the gravel for the road reconstruction or the grading. That is included in the capital project.
Okay. Thank you, because I looked at the dollar amount and they were pretty high initially there. My observation, if I may, your worship, this whole conversation we're having around roads, personnel, tomorrow night gravel, maybe another piece of equipment, that reflects on me, my desire, and this is only by example, I'm only using this as an example, to have a discussion on strategic direction, and then it would make the budget flow, because we've got bits and pieces here, personnel, gravel, maybe equipment tomorrow. And I think the strategic direction here is economic development, and the method is good roads and rural communities. So if we make a commitment to good roads, and all this fits together nicely, and I think would help us at budget time. And that's simply my observation.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any more questions on that page? Councilor Nelson?
Thank you. My question is for Vance again, and it's under gravel maintenance, grading, and graveling. 1010, salaries and wages. You have an amount of 92,790. Vance, is that for all the grading that we intend to do on all our roads for the season?
I can answer that question, Vince.
Thank you.
So the salaries and wages for all of the operations department, like the recreation department, is based on the previous 5 years average.
Yes.
So it's not specifically doing O'Neill Road from here to there is going to take us so many man hours. It's based on the average of the previous 5 years.
I understand that, but I think my concern is that it has been addressed by the community and by council and by staff that we need to increase the amount of grading that actually takes place. And I would expect that would be reflected in the budget.
At the end of the day, at the end of the year, if this particular line item is over budget, it means that a different line item is going to be below.
I think that's okay. I'm not sure, but I will accept.
Okay, any other questions on this page? No other questions? Page number 4. No questions on that page? Councilor Nelson?
Again, I apologize for all the questions I have, but when I see large increases, I have to ask. And that is on 3041, road signs and safety devices materials purchased, going up to $30,000. I'm assuming that that's a significant amount of road signs and safety devices that we need. Is that true?
Through your worship, absolutely. program that we started last year through our retro reflectivity program as per the minimum maintenance standards. We have a firm that goes around and tests all our signs to make sure that they meet the reflectivity requirements. And essentially, this is part of that ongoing program. And they give us a list of signs after that inspection is done, and they tell us which ones have passed or failed. And so the ones that are failed, we're purchasing the signs and we're heading out to replace them.
I'm pleased to hear that. However, I do have a question. That's not a task that we can perform ourselves. We have to hire a specialist to determine whether or not a sign reflects properly.
Through your worship, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Question, Councillor Teal.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Vance, is there a program in place right now where if a grader operator is out or any public works employees are out on a patrol and they do see a road safety sign that is in poor state of repair, is there a program where they report back to immediately to that sign has a deficiency and it takes priority to be replaced?
Through your worship, there definitely is. And however, through regular patrolling and the retro reflectivity program, so those staff can definitely see, like they can identify those ahead of time. And when they bring those back to the lead hand or I, we tell them, like, if there's a sign missing or a sign bent or down, we will get it replaced right away.
And is this you've already mentioned it, this reflection process? Yes. Is that provincially mandated?
Your worship, yes, it is.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that page? Seeing none, page number 5. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Vance, and I know I have a number of questions for you, but my curiosity piques me. Catch basins and storm sewers, 4005 contracted services. It's a significant increase of $30,000 up to $50,000 this year. I need some help understanding that. I'm assuming that there's a significant amount of work to be done, but could you explain that to me, please?
Certainly, Councillor, through your worship, that's a great question. With our catch basins and storm water systems in our urban areas, it's we make every effort to make sure that those sewers are cleaned out, and the contracted services required to make that happen is usually through a vac truck. And if we run into problematic areas while we're doing that, we also will at times hire the sewer cameras to go in and conduct further investigations to see if there's blockages or where there may be issues with our storm sewers. So we are, and I just want to chime in with this, our most recent weather patterns and so forth, our rainstorms are very, very concentrated and very, very in one area, and they're more severe. And an ongoing maintenance program with respect to our storm sewers is definitely essential.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on that page? No? All right, page number 6. Councillor Irwin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you. Last year at budget time, I noted that we had some pretty dark street lighting corners in Elsa Craig, and asked at that time if we could do a review of the lighting to see if additional lights were required. I just want to check to see if that work was undertaken.
Sorry, Your Worship, I was just making some notes. To the best of my knowledge, through Your Worship, Councillor, we have not added additional lights that were brought to our attention. to the best of my knowledge. However, we will undertake that to make sure that that's addressed.
Okay. Councillor Keo.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I find in situations like that, if you know of the dark areas, if you can make a note for it, it just kind of streamlines the process.
But Counselor, I did make a note last year, but I don't have my notebook with me. But I did have notes from last year, and I'll bring it tomorrow night. Because I did make a note last year, did specifically mention areas. And it's in my budget notebook at home, but I can bring it tomorrow evening.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Do we have a timeline on that, Vance? Maybe, I assume it would be the person doing the road patrol that would be able to see that, because I mean, obviously working hours during the day, so would that be done by road patrol, maybe looking at that, or who would undertake that?
Through your worship, two ways that we get that done. One is when folks let us know that lights are out, or if folks are letting us know that areas are darker and require more lights. And then what we also do is, mind you, we only get to in the winter months because of how the darkness and the staffing. However, in the future, during the summer months, we'll have to do some evening patrols to make sure that that's captured. And as an aside, Councillor, if you do bring your book tomorrow, that would be great, because we want to work with you and make sure that we get those areas taken care of.
Councillor Irwin.
Through your worship, I can send you an email quicker.
All right. All right. Nothing else on that page? No, next page. Next page is just the totals on it, right?
Just more street lighting areas, your worship.
When we put in the new lighting, when council did that year, it did definitely change the lighting in town. It put it down to the street, and most towns you go in, you see there's a glow in the sky. With this new lighting, this LED lighting, it's not. It's dark coming in, and you see it with traffic coming into town. They come in a little hotter at night than what have in the past, but it has changed the lighting on the streets and stuff a little bit. Jaden.
Yeah, through you, your worship, just just further to the comments we're hearing about the street lighting reviews or possibly adding to the street lights. I was just going to note that currently we don't have a budgeted amount for either doing any reviews, whether it's through engineer or for contracted services to extend street lights. So I just thought I'd put that out to council. If that's something that we do want to try to tackle in 2024, we may want to get allocating some budget towards that.
Okay, well, since there isn't anything there right now, it'd be nice to see if we just have some kind of report as to what's needed or what is figured to be, and then we'd have a better idea. I remember what we paid for those lights back then, but that was a while ago, and the hydro was already in, right? If we're talking about new lights and new poles, we may have to run hydro. That's a much bigger amount.
To Jaden's point, if we do the evaluation this year and not add additional budget for the contracting services, we might do the work just next year.
Yeah.
Because it's not budgeted this year.
Okay.
So it is not council's wish to add a token amount in here under contracted services for street lighting in order to implement some of the changes this year.
What's your wish? I'm not seeing anything. Oh, okay. No. Councillor Keo.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Well, any of the proposed areas, are they areas that are in the near future being disrupted, like as far as any type of road construction or anything like that?
I'm not sure. Some of them might be, not all.
Through your worship, yeah, two that I can think of would be Queen Street, where we might be doing some work with water lines, et cetera. I'm not sure at this time when that would happen. And two others are that I can think of through my memory, would be more in the middle of the community, interior off the major thoroughfares.
My point being is if it's slated for disrupt, like as far as any type of road construction shortly, I would be all over getting them done while the
While the
construction is
construction is
on.
being done, for
For
sure.
sure.
For sure, that timing would be, and that wouldn't be in 24, that amount. I think what you're talking about, just to put a placeholder in there, an amount of money.
That's correct. So I'm assuming we are discussing Elsa Craig at this point.
Yes, we are.
So that would be Ward 2.
Yeah, but I think in fairness, it shouldn't just be Ward 2. Of course, it needs to be Ward 1. Also, I believe Naren has some lighting as well. Carlisle? They don't have any lighting, do they? No, I'm seriously, I mean, we need to look at all of our the urban area that's,
So my point, I agree with you. We need to look at all the urban areas for sure, and that's an assessment that Vance will be doing. But in order to get the ball rolling this year, since there's already been some areas that have been identified as needing more light, specifically in Elsa Craig, we could just for 2024 budget, put a token amount in Ward 2 and then address the other needs in the 2025 based on Vance's assessment. Or do we just not do anything in 24 and keep it all for 25?
Vance.
As a potential placeholder and so forth, your worship, some of the just point of interest here, when you're looking at street lighting and perhaps putting in, you know, for example, new pole, new arm, new light, got to get a contractor, electrician to come in and hook it up and so forth, right? Some of the cost to put some of these lights in, depending on how far away they are from existing ones, et cetera, will come into play here. But if we were to put in a token amount, seeing as all of this work would obviously be contracted work and so forth, would 20,000 work for a starting point?
What's council wish? I think one, if you got to run the hydro and everything, I'll bet one light costs more than. I keep thinking that we paid 15,000 for the lights way back, but that might be the wrong number, but I believe it was.
Or what we could do also through your worship, we could send some, we can make every effort to get an estimate for council, we're in training tomorrow and so forth, but we can send out some emails and so forth and do our best to get at least an estimate in for council's consideration for tomorrow night's meeting. Do our best to do that anyways, and then at least we have a starting point.
All right, that would be good. At least we'd have something. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Just a suggestion, why don't we do the review in 2024 and come back with the 25 with a capital budget to put in the appropriate holes that the review identifies, and maybe have in this year's budget some monies for contracted services if are needed to do that review. I don't know who does that type of review, if that can be done by our own staff or if that's outside. And if we did that this year, then we'd have a capital amount for next year.
Yeah, I would hope we could do that in-house.
I would hope so. I don't know with the traffic manual if there's certain requirements for lighting and distances and all of that. I'm no expert on that.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, it's just funny how we just talked about putting in a couple of lights and all of a sudden, yeah. I would like to hear a report first before we put anything into it, right? Hear a staff report. The idea of having, if you have a number for tomorrow night as to what an estimate of each light, just a rough idea, that would help this conversation. Anything else on street lighting? Or I think we've heard it pretty well. I think we beat that one down. All right. The next one is,
We go back to page 1. It's for municipal drains.
okay, municipal drains. Questions on this page?
Thank you.
Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I see that we have, contracted services for 400,000 and professional engineering for 225,000. Is that not one and the same? Like, are we not talking to guys who engineer our drains?
Through your worship, no, it is not. The 400,000 would be to cover the drain expenses for municipal properties that are part of a drain. That would be the 400,000. 225,000 is for our consultants.
For the engineering part of it.
Correct.
So the 400,000, which we call contracted services, is actually drainage itself.
For the municipal properties, correct?
Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions on this page? No? Next page is just the totals.
Correct. So now we go to waste collection.
Waste collection.
Oh, sure, I have one.
Councillor Nelson.
I didn't even turn my mic off. I'm sorry about that. My question, who's the waste? Is it Jaden or is it Vance? Vance?
Typically, it's me. Yes.
Under Parkville Transfer Station, item 4005, contracted services is up at 50,000 this year, it's a $15,000 increase. Is that to get rid of the brush pile that's there?
Through your worship, that's correct.
And what do we need to do to get rid of that brush pile? Can we get the fire chief to take care of that with this equipment or not?
Through your worship, I would not advise anything perhaps to that effect. What is required, our environmental permit for the transfer station requires that all materials that are collected on the site must be removed once a year. So our stewardship programs, some of them have been working decently, our tire program and so forth, where more and more you have producers that are coming to our transfer station to collect the tires and so forth. But with respect to brush, because we have such a stockpile of it there, and just getting some quick estimates for some folks to have a contractor come in and grind the whole entire pile down. That's what that increase is for in the budget. However, we can find out what's going to happen obviously for next budget, not to get too far ahead of myself here, but it is my plan to not put us in that position again so that we have such a large brush pile. If it is something that we can undertake with our own staff, and or smaller service contracts that we can do on an ongoing basis to make sure that those materials are gone to prevent us from being in the situation.
I think that's a great idea, Vance. I really do. I think it's an excellent idea. Now, my final comment is that once it gets to the transfer station, it has to be disposed of. It can't just go to somebody's property used for chips and whatnot. It has to be disposed of somewhere, special place, doesn't it?
Your worship, yes, I would highly recommend that typically municipalities that run transfer stations and so forth are good environmental stewards. And when getting rid of that brush pile, it would be to chip it and make sure that it goes to the right place. And to just build on that, that's just an excellent question. To also build on that, so there's a second pile over there, and that's all the leaf and yard waste. So when we go to tender this particular project this year, we will make sure that the contractor is essentially going to make sure that the leaf pile goes to a compost pile that is a compost program, so that it gets turned into compost and it gets to its right, to its rightful destination. And secondly, with the brush pile, if we bring a tub grinder in and we grind it right down to chips, it'll maximize on the haulage, so that when we're hauling it out, and we'll maximize on our haulage. And secondly, it'll be a requirement in that tender as well to make sure that organic material gets to a proper location as well. Thirdly, you bring up a good point. If we, I don't want to get into a situation where we're just contracting somebody to come in and just clam it all into a truck and it just gets trucked to someone else's property in the municipality and stockpiled there. Although I'm not trying to think that I should get into, commenting on how people conduct their business. However, for the purposes of, for preventing fires and so forth and things like that, that material needs to get to the proper place.
Thank you, Vance.
Any other questions on this? Councillor Irwin?
Thank you, Worship. I want to clarify something from a previous council meeting when I was talking about, if not a transfer station, at least somewhere people can dump their leaves in Ward 2, Elsa Craig. And I think there was an error perhaps on my part. Now, leaves at the transfer station, if I dump them off, there's no tippage fee, correct?
To your worship, there's no, that's correct. You can dump those there for free of charge.
And I think at the meeting, we talked about a fee for those. So that was perhaps an error on my part, and I just want to make sure that people understand they can bring their leaves to the Park Hill transfer station for free.
Yep. Any other questions on this page? Comments? No? The next one is spring cleanup. Anything on the spring cleanup? Seeing nothing. The next one I see is cemeteries. It starts with the North Middlesex Cemetery, Park Hill. Nothing on cemeteries? Go ahead.
I do have a comment on it, which I find kind of ironic that we have closed cemeteries, but we still have a list of opening fees. Like, I'm assuming we don't open closed plots, do we? I just find it ironic when I saw that.
Excellent point. That shell account can be removed.
Sorry, if I may.
Yep.
We may have a circumstance where there might be an opening of a closed plot if it was priorly arranged or purchased, but in most cases we don't.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, next page. Nothing on there. Our next page, number 3.
Good questions on that one.
Mr. Canellis.
Yes, I do have a couple of questions on page number 3, and that's for the closed cemeteries again. 4012 and 4019. Contracted services or professional services, sorry. It's a substantial amount. We're talking $27,000 legal fees for these 2 cemeteries. What exactly are we doing them? I'm questioning you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'm missing my little thing, so forgive me if it comes off weird online. But so for the legal services, we're in the process of acquiring closed cemeteries, and with that comes some legal costs. Sorry. With that comes some legal costs and some extenuating timelines for those legal costs as well.
And is that taxpayer funded or is that from reserves in the existing cemeteries?
The Director of Finance is noting that it's from reserves.
No,
Tax
it's tax.
Hit a 50-50 shot. You got it.
So I guess, how does the taxpayer benefit from these legal services on these closed cemeteries?
It's part of running a business, running a cemetery.
And unfortunately, we
But-
have to
but-
take them on.
Okay,
It is a mandated service
Mhm.
that we're performing and to the community, and that's just but there is a lot more legal to that than I was expecting to see. I know there is certainly more work to the cemeteries. Any other questions on page 3? Seeing none, page 4 is just the totals.
And now Vance is off the hook and it's Brandon's turn.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, your work, just a second. Counselor Irwin.
Yeah, Your Worship, none of the fire chief is here. I wonder if I could go back to that original question for him before we move on to community service.
All right.
So through your worship to the chief, we were discussing previously the move from volunteer to part-time status for firefighters. And we want to get a sense of how do our firefighters feel about that, especially given it might have an impact on their wages or certainly their take-home wages.
Through your worship, as we are still fleshing out how that impacts everyone, we have not had a discussion about that yet. So the implications for pension and source deductions, we have not explored that with them yet.
Go ahead.
Follow up, Your Worship. Thank you. Do you think in these discussions that are pending, there may be the desire to increase the amount that firefighters make to keep their morale up, so to speak, to keep them involved and retained?
That's an excellent question. It was, as all councillors are aware, we're going through the fire master plan process now. All the active firefighters were sent a survey. There is a question in there about whether their level of participation, particularly at training and other events, would likely be impacted if the hourly rate was brought up. I don't have the results of those surveys, but that is kind of a jumping off point for talking about, do we bring that hourly rate up?
Okay, Counselor Canellis.
Thank you. Greg, you did mention in one of our meetings, I believe, that you were looking to increase the hourly rate to $25 an hour. Am I correct?
Yes.
Now, does that mean to abandon then the point system?
No, it would be in conjunction with the point system, and it would try to bring it to make it a more equitable distribution.
Okay. And I do remember asking you at the committee level to come back with numbers of the cost increases for the transition to recognizing them as part-time employees. I'm assuming you haven't come up with those numbers yet.
We haven't got that.
When can we expect those numbers?
I was going to bring that to the next fire committee meeting, which I believe is in May. So
they won't be part of the budget. Yeah, we don't know how it's going to impact on your budget.
the bottom line won't change. It'll just be the way that the pay is structured.
I don't think my colleague to my right here agrees with you, but I'll accept your answer.
If I may clarify, there will be additional costs for the employer contribution of the CPP and EI and OMERS. Those will be additional costs to the municipality. That will not be taken out of the volunteer firefighters. My apologies. Their portion will be coming out of the envelope for the volunteer firefighters.
So just to be clear, I don't see this as being a real popular thing. I think that's what Councilor Irwin's getting at, is there now, they don't have any choice. If they are part-time employees, that wasn't our choice, it wasn't their choice. It's being presented by, I guess, legal case that's happened. And so that is something, though, that we're gonna have to look at as to, because they're going to take home less money. Simple as that. And these guys I'm sorry, my mistake for the terminology. The firefighters went to a barn or wherever they got to go to. And in 2024, they're going to make less money to go there. Not that they're getting paid wages, but they're going to make less money than what they made. And that's a pretty tough one, I think. And that's something we want to make sure. I think when you bring it to the fire committee, Greg, that's a great chance for us to have a conversation and then bring it back to council after the committee, because it doesn't seem right.
If I may add,
Yes.
in regards to the CPP, there is a $3,000, $3,500, not sure which one it is. Limit that somebody can earn before having CPP deducted. Everybody has that deduction. So our firefighters can earn up to that amount without having to deduct CPP. OMERS is going to be totally 100% their decision whether or not they want to participate in the OMERS plan.
Right.
So basically that leaves just EI. That would be a mandatory deduction.
Okay. But I think I look forward to hearing it at the committee level, talking about having this conversation. And I look at the chair here for the committee, but having that conversation, then bringing it to council after we talk with a recommendation or at least some thoughts.
If I may,
Yes.
in 2023, more than half of our firefighters did not meet that $3,500 threshold. So more than half of them would not be contributing, wouldn't have that deduction being made.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So is that it for the fire chief? You good with that? Okay. So I think the first page we're on now is it's other grants is the top line. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So it's page 1 under the community services tab. And I believe this one, like operations, the pagination will work. So the page 1 starting with 1471010303, other grades.
All right. Questions on this? Councillor Knellison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Brandon, I'm looking at the ice rental 0688. And there's a minus 45,000 there. Now, in 23 budget is 175, you're projecting a significant increase in ice rental?
That is correct.
Is that in the rentals itself or is that in the cost of each rent?
I would say a little bit of both. I think we saw about 11% increase in total volume across this past season. So.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions on that page? No? All right, page number 2. Councillor Knellison.
So again, I apologize for the number of questions I have. However, my curiosity has vested me. Brandon, on West Williams Community Center, 0697 facility rental, you have been there $12,500. Does that include the proposed rentals from the rugby team?
That does, because the booking software recognizes West Williams Fields as part of the West Williams Community Center. So they will come through there, as will the Bluegrass Festival.
Oh, so it's included in the Bluegrass as well?
Correct.
You answered my next question. Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Seeing none? Page number 3. Deputy Mayor Hodgins, did you have a question? Oh, I just thought I'd ask. I just didn't want to miss you. Okay. Nothing on page number 3. Councillor Irwin.
Through you, your worship, I'm wondering how sure we are around the YMCA numbers, given that they are spending this year as a rebuilding year.
Currently, those numbers are their estimate. How firm they are is yet to be seen.
Are you wanting an adjustment in the numbers or you?
No, I think I just should note for council that how firm they are is yet to be seen, because I think we'll see something different later in the year.
Okay, yeah, agreed. Any other questions on this page? Seeing none, page 4. Nothing on that page? I know. Councillor Canales.
Councillor Irwin reminded me that I do have a question on that. and that's snow removal, and perhaps Vance can join in on that question as well. Because I understand that we're outfitting a pickup truck with a front blade on it, so we can do our bridges. And I think at the time that we had that discussion on acquiring those, that equipment, my question at that time was, can this piece of equipment also do some of our parking lot? So between the two of you, is that going to be the case? Are we going to do some of our own parking lots now with snow removal, or are we going to continue to rely on someone who we have to provide them with a retaining fee, whether they actually plow snow or not?
So our current structure, we only pay when they plow snow or apply salt. There's no retaining fee. It's sometimes a little bit misleading when there's snow piled up and we have a day where it's 4 degrees during the day and then we have a freeze overnight. That parking lot still needs to be salted because now the runoff has frozen. So we have seen a pretty significant increase, I would say. January specifically, I can remember looking at the bill and kind of being floored by it. But in saying that, those are the costs for salt these days. Whether we could do it in-house or not, Vance and I would have to work together and evaluate the capacity on that side of it. Certainly if the capacity was there, and the equipment suited the needs, we could certainly take a look and see if we can start lowering some of those.
Well, yeah, because the thing, in at least some of the parking lots, not saying all of them, at least some of them. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this page? Just a note, I think when we're done with this department, we'll take a 5 to 10 minute break. All right. No other questions on page 4? Page 5? Nothing? Page 6? Councilor Irwin.
Sorry, your worship, just want to get your attention. This relates to parts of 4, 3, 5, 6, whatever, and it deals with insurance premiums. Now, I did see the note that premiums generally have risen 8%. So I have 2 questions. I want to understand exactly what's covered in these premiums for our facilities. And what are the things we can look at potentially is a decrease in premiums, depending what's covered, because I've been doing some investigation on environmental committees, and it seems that communities that bring in some environmental abatement practices can see their premiums decrease by as much as 20%. So I'm curious what's included in these to start, your worship, in terms of liability, et cetera. And maybe the public would like to hear that.
I do not have all of the insurance policy writing in front of me. That is a binder that's about this thick. But we can put a summary together and present, write a report to council outlining everything that is covered under our insurance policy. But at this point in front of me, I don't have.
No,
all of
that's,
those
I think that will
details.
take a bigger answer.
Yeah.
Thank you, worship. I'm just curious about like generic overall coverage in terms of liability. For example, and then we're not on this page yet, but on page 8, we have the old town hall covered with insurance as an example, and so forth. So I'm just curious, and maybe I'll wait for the report to get a sense of what's in and what's out. I get questions on this from certain community groups. Be helpful to have that information.
Yeah, we can certainly put a report together.
Okay. Any other questions on page 6? Page 7? Seeing nothing?
It just, if I may, your worship,
Yep.
as I was thinking about it, just the last question, I'm just wondering if it might be advantageous to have a presentation from Darcy or something come in and do an overview of our insurance, whether that would be a benefit that way, or would you prefer a report from staff?
To be honest, whatever is the most informative. So I don't know if it's the report would be more informative or a presentation from our
Okay, well, maybe
agent.
we can even do a combination. We'll take it under advisement and bring something back.
Okay, page 7, there was no questions. Page 8. Page 9. Nothing on page 9. Page 10 is strictly the totals. Yep.
Check behind page 10. Maybe.
I think that's the end of the operating for that department. You don't have a page 9? Okay, we'll have to get.
All right.
No other questions for Brandon at this time? Well, there'll be more in capital, I'm sure. Okay, let's just stop for a 5-10 minute break and we'll come back then. And I think it's economic development.